It was a warm July morning, July 6, 1971. For my birthday, my parents got me tickets to see Grand Funk Railroad out at Shea Stadium. By this time, I was pretty much over Grand Funk, but the tickets were a present, and my younger brother Kenny was going with me. I got up that morning after shooting almost $45 worth of dope the night before, and not really gotten fucked up. This was a problem with heroin. After a while, it just didn't get you high. Plus, the junk hadn't been the best. I decided to go up to the hippie lawn by the cloisters and see what was up. And who knows, maybe find a way to make a few bucks so I can get some dope before the show. I was sitting in the park with a guy named Little Jimmy. Little Jimmy was a Puerto Rican kid from the Heights, and his connections were a lot better than mine. We were sitting on the wall that overlooked the West Side Highway when Bobby Marshall came up and asked us to help him out. Seems he had broken into an apartment near the park and wanted help to look for valuables. I had never done a burglary before, but needed some dough, so Jimmy and I followed Bobby up to this apartment. The front door was unlocked and we walked in. I looked around and saw that Bobby had climbed through the kitchen window. There was a small dog in the apartment that yapped for a while until he finally got tired of it and fell asleep. What I didn't know, but probably should have, was that Bobby had already gotten just about anything worth getting out of the place. So Jimmy and I looked around in a bedroom that obviously belonged to a teenage girl, and a place I probably would have loved to have visited when the girl was home, but was nervous as hell in now. All I could find was some really cheap watches, a locket, and a box full of earrings. I took some earrings for myself, so I only took one of each pair that I liked. We looked around some more and left and back to the park. Bobby gave Jimmy and me a few bucks each, and I ended up with $16. Before I left him, Little Jimmy told me if I copped on 180th Street to be real careful because the smoker was out there. You heard things like this all the time, but Little Jimmy didn't bullshit, so I kept it in mind. As the afternoon turned into evening, I was looking to cop. I hooked up with a friend from the Heights named Jimmy Toohey. We looked around and heard everything was garbage. Then we hooked up with another Irish guy named Sully. We were just about to cop when this Puerto Rican junkie named Herbie showed up. He stopped us and said we had to cop at 180th Street because that's where the smoker was. Now, I didn't trust Herbie. I figured he was just trying to get a free bag for copping for us. But Jimmy was best friends with Herbie, and Jimmy was also one of my best friends, so he talked me into copping with Herbie. I had 16 bucks, enough for 7 bags with $2 left over to get me to the Grand Funk show. The way Herbie thought we should do it was 2 bags each for me, Jimmy, and Herbie, and then 1 for Sully, who only snorted. He was a football player at Cardinal Hayes and pretty much a jock. So Herbie copped for us, and the bags had the outline of a star stamped on it. This was the first time I'd ever seen a bag with any kind of stamp. Later they started using colored tape to seal the bags, and later than that brand names went into effect, but that was much later. Herbie kept saying I should only do 2 bags, but I was tempted to do 4 and give the others 1 each, because after all it was my money that paid for this dope. But I remembered what Little Jimmy had said about 180th Street dope, and made a deal with Herbie. I'd get off first, I'd shoot 2 bags, and then if I didn't get high, I'd do 2 more. This wasn't as good as doing 4 bags at once because you didn't get that rush, but that was the deal. So we went up to the skylight on the roof of Herbie's building, up on 186th Street. We put out the water, the cooker, the works, and the dope. It was getting late, and I had to hurry to get to Shea Stadium for the show, and as planned, I got off first. Sully snorted up his bag as I cooked up. It cooked up really clean, and I drew it up. I got a hit right away and shot it right in, and only booted it once. I took the needle out, and nothing. This is what we call the creeper. From a lot of dope, the rush you get was mainly from the quinine that the dope was cut with. So I waited a second, and I was about to tell them I was going to do the other 2 bags when all of a sudden I started to feel it. It began in the back of my throat, where a lot of rushes start. It was spreading through my body, and I knew I was going to go out. I had already overdosed once, so I knew what was happening, but this was much more intense. Much more intense. I felt that if I got out to the rooftop and got some air, I could keep myself from ODing. So I told everybody to move the dope and the works because I needed air, and started to walk up the flight of stairs to the rooftop. I took 1 step, and that was the last thing I remembered. The next thing I knew, I was being given the last rites by a priest and being wheeled into an operating room where I lost consciousness again. I woke up a while later. Well, it was days later, actually. My mom was in the room when I came to. I had no idea what had happened. A psychiatrist came into the room and interviewed me. He asked me what happened. I told him the last thing I remember was being on a rooftop on 186th Street in Audubon Avenue, having shot 2 bags of what turned out to be the best dope I had done up to that time. He asked me if I OD'd accidentally, and when I told him I had, he left. As long as I hadn't tried to commit suicide, he didn't have to talk to me anymore. After he left, my mom showed me a mirror. My hair was caked in blood. My face on the left side was one solid scab. My left arm was swollen and hurt like a bitch. My neck on the left side was also swollen. It looked like I had been worked over by a couple of guys, and that's exactly what had happened to me. I called Jimmy to find out what happened, and he gave me all the details. It seems after I told him to move everything and started walking up the stairs, I actually made it all the way. I have no memory of this. They said I walked up the stairs, got to the door, and stood there for a minute and swayed back and forth before falling flat on my face. Luckily, I wasn't too close to the edge of the roof, or I'd have fallen right off. So my friends, being true dope fiends, got off before coming to my aid, which didn't help because they were soon almost as high as me. First they tried to massage my heart by rubbing my back as my face rubbed up and down on the tar paper covered roof. The tar paper had small rocks in it, I guess for traction, so it looked like sandpaper. It also acted like sandpaper with the skin on my face. That was soon all rubbed off. Then Sully, being the least high, pulled me up and started to slap me around. A slap in the face will generally bring out people on a light OD, but I was way beyond that. As Sully got more frustrated, he started to punch me in the face and the neck, probably, if anything, knocking me further into unconsciousness. Next, junkies, including myself, had always heard that mainlining salt into a person's veins would neutralize the dope. Well, this was just junkie lore, and it's really hard to get a hit in the vein of someone who has taken a real overdose because the heartbeat and blood pressure is so low. So Jimmy got frustrated, and he just skin popped the salt into my upper arm, where it stayed and turned a delightful shade of aquamarine under my skin. This having failed, they went down to Herbie's place for some ice. Ice under an OD'd person's balls was supposed to snap them out of it. Well, the ice went under my balls and nothing. Then they started to rub ice under my armpits. Only place left for ice was up my ass. Again, no results. This was getting bad. Not for me, as I didn't feel a thing, but my friends were freaking out. Then Frankie arrived. He took one look at me and went to call 911. Then he went back to the roof to get my friends out of there, so they weren't there when the cops showed. When the cops arrived, they found me all beaten up with my pants down around my ankles. They also called my parents and told them where and how they found me. Then they searched me for drugs and found my loot from the day's heist. So one of the first things they told my parents was I was a burglar. Finally, they get me to the hospital, took me into intensive care and worked on me. I still don't know exactly how long I was unconscious or what they did to me. Eventually I got up and got to the phone and called some of my friends. First I called Jimmy, just to ask him what the fuck he did to my arm. He told me he was scared, couldn't get a hit, and skin popped me with salt. That's not a good thing, Jimmy. Before going back to my bed, I called a few more friends. The first question from all my dope fiend friends was, "Where did you cop?" Everyone wanted the dope I had done that night. Within hours of my OD, the same bags were selling for $5. This was a special bag and the dealers knew it. So now I had to deal with my arm. The swelling in my face went down pretty quick, but the scab stayed around for a while. By far the worst injury was to my arm. An abscess had formed, and I was given a lot of antibiotics to make it come to a head so it could be lanced. Well, it came to a head twice. The thing split. Now I had 2 lancings to look forward to. The first one was quick enough. They paint your arm with betadine, spray local anesthetic, and slice you open. Then they decided it was time to cut the other abscess. This was gonna hurt more because I already knew what it was like. They took me back to the operating room, painted my arm with betadine, and started to shoot me up with Novocaine this time. Finally, the doctor made his first cut. The nurse had forgotten to cover my face, so I saw the incision. A slight motion of the scalpel, and the skin parted like the Red Sea. Blood began to pour out of the slice. I looked up into the doctor's eyes and he freaked, yelling at the nurse to cover my eyes. It doesn't help for a patient to see himself sliced open like that. It was pretty much the same drill as the last time, only it seemed to hurt more. At one point, I considered running away to avoid the lancing. This left me with a good chance of losing my arm, but I didn't care. I just wanted away from the pain. I even called a friend whose clothes would fit me to bring clothes to my escape, but luckily I didn't go. The final total of pus taken from my arm was 22 ounces. I still have scars and indentations in my upper left arm where the infected flesh was cut away. These kind of wounds have to heal from the inside out, so daily I take off the dressing, pour peroxide into the 3/4 of an inch deep wounds, and watch them foam up. The one thing I remember most was the day I was getting out of the hospital, my portable radio was playing Bob Dylan's New Morning. It was the perfect song. I felt great. That night I went to Central Park to see the Allman Brothers, while Dwayne was still alive, and found a girl who liked me and didn't get high. I really felt like it was a new morning, that things had changed. I had a girl who liked me, no heroin habit, and my mom decided to take me to Jamaica with my little brother and my aunt and my cousin. I was on top of the world. But by the next night, I was in the park where Herbie had copped that dope, shooting dope into the same arm that had 2 holes, with a belt wrapped just below the bandages that covered my wounds. What a difference a day makes.